This episode is brought to you by Summer School Electronics. With pedals like the Snow Day Delay, the Pep Rally Fuzz, the Trash Panda, and my personal favorite, the Science Fair, which is two classic dirt pedals in one, with a mid-boosted overdrive on one side, a black lab rat circuit on the other, and a blend knob to blend between them to find the perfect classic stacked dirt sound you're looking for, it's hard not to find something you'll love. Mark builds all of his pedals by hand in Syracuse, New York, where he also works as a full-time educator. In addition to the super fun graphics on their pedals, Mark also offers custom artwork. Want your dog's face on a pedal? He can do it. Want your face on a pedal? He can make that happen too. Go over to summerschoolelectronics.com and make sure to tell him that 40 Watt Podcast sent you. This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road. Hello and welcome, 40 Watters. Welcome back to another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip. I am your host. I'm excited to be here today. Look at y'all. I didn't say I'm super excited or super pumped. I say super a lot, so I'm trying to get better. I think I negated the benefits of not saying it by mentioning it, though. So here we are again, another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. This week, I'm super excited to have to be joined by David from Great Eastern Effects. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you. Very happy to be here.
I'm very glad you could be here. We've been chatting it's been a little bit before now, and I can be really bad at email sometimes, and it took us a little while to get connected. But we talked, we chatted a little bit, and they were like, we gotta do an episode together, because I had discovered your pedals by talking to Joe Branton over at the Guitar Nerds podcast.
Sure,
I love Joe.
sure.
I love Matt. I love those. I love being a guest on that podcast. And they're constantly raving about your stuff. So Joe connected us, said we needed to talk. And I've been checking out one of your pedals. We'll get to that at some point in this podcast. But how are you today?
Great, yeah. It's evening for me, Sunday evening. So I've had a very domestic weekend with family, away from pedals, and I'm ready for Monday. I'm ready to go back to work.
Oh gosh, I'm so not ready. No. Thankfully, as we're recording this, it's over a holiday weekend, and I don't have to go to work on Monday, so I'm not ready for Tuesday, which I already refer to as second Monday. So,
yeah. Do you know what? Increasingly, I find I need time away from thinking about guitars and pedals and overdrive all the time, because when you're a one person company, which I am most of the time, it's super intense, and I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about pedals. I go to sleep at night thinking about pedals, and it's really good for me to have weekends where I don't do any of that stuff, and then can come back and feel some joy for it, some excitement for it again.
Yeah, I think no matter what you do for a living or for a hobby, sometimes you just need to take a break from it to still enjoy it, because you get so wrapped up in everything that it just starts to take over every moment of your life, and you're like, I'm burned out. I'm completely tired.
There have been points where, towards the end of developing the Focus Fuzz, the first pedal that we do, I just was so sick of listening for minute differences in distortion, guitar distortion, that I just had to go home and listen to flute music or classical music or like electronic dance music, or just anything that wasn't loud guitars, which I really love. But you have to kind of rest those bits of you every now and again, otherwise you can't hear it anymore. It's just
it's like if you've ever been and done like a wine or bourbon tasting or something like that, they'll tell you, especially when so I toured the Jack Daniel's distillery once in Tennessee, and they do a single barrel sour mash whiskey. You can buy the whole barrel if you want. I think it fills something like 200 some odd, 750 milliliter bottles. For you Americans that don't want to do milliliters, that's a fifth. It's essentially a fifth of a gallon.
I've never known what that is, but now I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, this is essentially a fifth of a gallon is the math doesn't actually quite work out, but that's the yeah. Not a math podcast, good, because I'm not the mathematician to be explaining because I am going to get it wrong. But they talk about if you go to the distillery and you want to buy, now you have to still buy it the way liquor laws work. You have to buy it through your local liquor store, but if you're close enough, you can go to the distillery, sample a couple of barrels, and pick which barrel is going to be yours. And they tell you, when you taste it, don't actually swallow it, don't drink, spit it out, because if you do and you do that too often, it just all tastes the same. Like you're just going to taste the same to everyone. I get that way about overdrives a lot, where if I'm
Yeah,
listening to too many back and forth, it sounds like an overdrive.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
get just inundated with it.
yeah. There's somebody. It's terrible that I can't remember, but I saw somebody on YouTube made some great videos where they were kind of brave enough to actually say, do all overdrives sound the same, and
Mm-hmm.
put things next to each other. And I think it's a really valid question. I mean, obviously, it people often say about fuzzes, if you're not into fuzz, then they all kind of sound the same, and if you're into fuzz, the differences really matter, and that's definitely true.
Yes.
But it's a question of degrees, isn't it? There's uh, well, I mean, what do you think is the other thing people say about tasting wine, or going to distilleries or wineries? Like you go to the south of France to this amazing vineyard, and the sun's just um, going down over the hill, and they sit you down under a tree, and they bring you a glass of this wine, and it's the best thing you've ever tasted in your life. And you buy like 4 cases, and strap the back of your car down. You drive home, and then you open a bottle on a rainy Wednesday night in February, and you're like, yeah, this is really ordinary. I don't know what I was thinking. So I don't know what the equivalent would be if you went to a guitar store, and they set you up in a beautiful room with like a beautiful amp and a guitar, and
I think it's not
and
even us playing. I think it's the concept, like we hear our favorite guitar players play something, and they're one, if you're hearing them on the record or you're hearing them even live where it's been rehearsed and ready, and that's their sound, that's the way they play, it's how it reacts to them, all those factors we all talk about all the time. You've just heard it in its ideal setting for someone else. That doesn't mean that when you use it, it's going to sound with your guitar, your hands, your amp, it's going to sound at all like you thought it sounded.
yeah,
So
unfortunately,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, my hands. I was at a buddy's house in Chicago, and um we were real curious, and so we all passed a guitar around and all played the same riff. And it was interesting to be playing same guitar, same amp, nothing changed except who was playing it, and to hear the tonal changes in hands just
yeah,
by itself.
yeah. I remember years ago, John Priest, who runs a guitar store here called Peach Guitars,
Yeah.
and he's a big SRV guy, and I remember chatting to him about guitars, and he was saying, everything I pick up, people just say it sounds like a Strat, because he'll just kind of rip into Stevie Ray stuff, and he showed me that it's kind of true. He could make everything sound a bit like a Strat. But the thing you say about records is something I've really got to be in my bonnet about, the fact that uh, the reference points we use for guitar tone, for how we want to sound, the sound we have in our head, is generally it's a record. So
Yeah.
it's someone in a studio with an engineer, and even you may not even know the guitar and amp they're using. All those stories about Jimmy Page's Telecaster has sold more Les Pauls than any Les Paul out there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you the sound that we love is the recorded sound, and the pictures we have is of the live stage. So we see Jimmy Page with a Les Paul in front of a stack of Marshalls, and then on the record he's using a Telecaster and like a little super amp or whatever it is, and not just that, it's a little super amp with a microphone in front of it and another one in the room probably, and a beautiful desk preamp compressor, all this sort of stuff, and the mix. Don't forget what the bass player is doing that works in harmony with the
Right.
guitar, but all this stuff, and then we make our gear choices based on the live stuff. Do you know what I mean? We want the recorded sound, but we make live sound choices, and
Right.
it's such a big thing that we're all guilty of. I mean, it's so easy to do, but it's something that really is worth being aware of.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, and like especially in the rise of things like Kemper and Helix and like the quad cortex and that kind of stuff. And my statement has always been, oh, it sounds like recorded guitar sound. It just does. Even
Mm.
through a speaker on stage, of full range speaker, it sounds like recorded guitar tone, and that's not what I'm used to playing. That doesn't feel right. It
Yes.
doesn't sound right. I'm used to
Yeah.
hearing the guitar into the amplifier, not guitar into the amplifier, into a mic, into a into a compressor, into an EQ, mixed in a record. When I play live, I know what a guitar sounds like live and what to get the best out of it. But I hear those kinds of units. Like I used Line 6, as my listeners know, for a while. I used a Helix and the two full range cabinets and played that way. And it had a sheen. It was like it was record ready.
Sheen is the word, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And to me it gets weird. It's not that that's a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we're wanting to make live recorded guitar sounds. And then by the time you turn around and record those sounds, or it just feels like there's a lot of layers that go on top of it that get away from the actual sound of a guitar into an amplifier.
Yeah.
It I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a soapbox for me that I'm trying to stay off of, but I'm on it again. Um, they sound fine. They do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
David, let's back up a little bit. We just jumped
Sure.
into talking, but so
We did.
how'd you get into guitar? How'd you get into music? How'd you get into being of what my listeners know I affectionately call the lunatics that build pedals, because you're all
That's right.
lunatics for
That's
wanting to get
right.
into this. How'd you get into it all?
Well, originally I was a writer. I worked for Sound on Sound magazine, which is a studio recording magazine here in the UK, and that was my first sort of real job out of university. And then I went to work for a guitar magazine called Guitar Buyer, where I was the editor for about 4 years. So that was really my sort of introduction um, to the industry, really, and a pretty good one. I mean, back then print magazines were still just about a thing. This is sort of starting early noughties, um, and for about 10 years that was what I was doing. So you still people would pick up the phone to you, and you would get flown to go to trade shows and go and meet people, and it was a pretty cool thing for a 20 something kid to get a chance to do. And the what I liked most about it was really meeting the people who were making things. So meeting amp designers, people making acoustic guitars, and electric guitars, and I mean the business side of it was never that interesting to me. And you know, you have to also sit through a lot of press conferences announcing stuff that you're not remotely interested in. But
Yeah,
for the chance
I've
to yeah,
I was gonna say I've ranted about the influencer culture pretending to be excited about things they don't care about, and like
yeah,
the frustrating nature of it.
yes, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, getting to kind of talk to people who are really really knowledgeable, and you could just ask them anything, and that was a really amazing education. As was actually having to write sometimes, you know, 4, 5, 6 reviews a month of different bits of gear, and similarly, you know, I got really sick of reviewing um, mid range to budget gear, all of which was great. All of which was, you know, well, no, all of which was fine. It was absolutely
Yeah.
fine. And but there's nothing like having to do that, you know, 6 times a month to really. I think I was pretty much cured of my gas by the end of it. But you know, for all of that was hard work. You know, I also got sent amazing stuff to play, amazing amps, amazing guitars. Again, stuff I never, you know, I might have had a chance to go into a music shop and play that stuff, but never to kind of just have it sent to me and I could take it home and or go and gig with it, you know, play with this stuff. So that was a really amazing experience. But I was pretty burned out after 10 years. It was getting tougher and tougher. The the industry was completely changing because of YouTube. I mean, even the kind of social media stuff that's so dominant now was really not such a big factor then, but YouTube was clearly coming. I mean, people were still, if you can believe this, coming to terms with the existence of the internet and what that meant for print magazines, which feels like another, you know, 100
Yeah.
years ago or something. But
Right.
yeah,
I think of the '90s when the music industry, not the musical instrument industry, the music industry had to come to grips with the existence of the internet and the ease with which it now made uh, basically stealing music. You know how it made it
yeah,
so easy that needed to find a way to combat it. And there's some
yes,
arguments to be made they didn't maybe combat it the way they should have. Um,
yeah,
as a librarian, I actually see the way it's happening in the publishing industry, like in the print industry, on book side, because. For example, listeners, if you go to your public library and you sign up for their service, maybe they've got Overdrive or Libby or maybe even Hoopla, whatever service they've got where you could get ebooks through them. Those ebooks, I just bought some for my library this week. a a book that would have cost maybe $20 on the shelf to buy the book that the library can then circulate, to get an ebook copy of it, it's like $80 and 4 times the price. And on top of that, they've got it set so that even though it's digital, only one person can use it at a time. And after 48 months, you don't own that book anymore.
mm,
And so the publishing industry still doesn't even know how to handle the existence of the
yeah,
internet. So I
yeah,
think that's really fascinating to hear someone that was in magazines at the time, because I just remember watching all my favorite magazines disappear.
yeah. That's exactly what happened. And I mean, the crazy thing is, when I went in as a um, you know, 21 year old, um, they were uh, they still had a lot of the archive stuff was on large format film. You know, digital photography was a new thing that was putting. So there used to be these scanning houses. So you photograph, do your product photography on large format film. You go to scanning house. Someone have to manually turn it into a digital image, remove all the hairs and specks of dust, and within a few years, those guys were just not needed. They were out of
Yeah.
business. Um, and you know, when I started, it was kind of if you take that spell from 2000 to 2010, at the beginning of that time, the music industry is at its kind of all time high point in terms of the money made from selling records.
Yeah.
And at the end of that period, the music industry is absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
And Napster is here, and you know all this stuff is happening. But yeah, not I was not you know super aware of all this stuff. That whole period, I just was aware that I had a deadline every month, and I
Right.
had a 305 page magazine, whatever it was, to get out. yeah, which was really full on, but amazing. I mean, come on, what an opportunity! If you do something that people would do for free and get paid for it, play with guitars, go
It's it's
go
it's
to
a
gigs,
fun way to make a
talk
living.
talk to talk to guitarists. I mean, amazing, so good. But I did need a break at the end of it, and I did have a period away. I was still I wrote for other music magazines as a freelancer for a while,
Hmm.
and did kind of writing work that was totally separate. And I probably needed 5 or 6 years to really um, totally reset how I felt um, about the industry, and it has been really nice actually coming back in. I did NAMM for the first time as an exhibitor rather than as a journalist, and doing guitar shows here in the UK, and sort of 3 years ago when I kind of started in earnest. That was so nice to kind of meet up again with people I hadn't seen for a long time, and kind of renew those acquaintances. But actually, I mean, when I was getting going, the fact that I still was in touch with people who were already established and making things was incredibly useful. And yeah, I mean, everyone says this, but just asking other people, hey, what do I do about this? Even the
Yeah.
dumbest questions, uh, it's an incredibly helpful sort of industry that we're in. Very very generous people, and yeah, that really helped me kind of get going, and it kind of gave me the confidence because I mean by that time I mean by the time I really decided I was going to get serious and start a full time company. I felt pretty sure that I had some stuff that I couldn't see anywhere else. I had some ideas, some designs that sounded really good, and that were genuinely going to offer something a bit different. Um, but there's still such a long way from making one good pedal to being able to make 100, uh,
Yeah.
and make them all good. And yeah, I'm still learning so much. I feel like this, you it's like shining a torch in the dark. You have these little pools of knowledge surrounded by complete ignorance, and occasionally you manage to join two of them up, and that's an amazing feeling because your
That
pool of light gets a bit bigger.
that is the best. That is one of the best ways I've ever heard that seeking of information and knowledge illustrated. That's really, I'm going to steal that one. That's going to be how I
Oh,
explain that
please,
in the future.
you're welcome.
So so
You're
so
welcome.
3 years ago, you start Great Eastern with some designs you'd been kicking around, you've been working on already. When did you first get interested in building circuits? Have you always been? Because it's a quick jump from going into journalism to sorry, it's a big jump to go from journalism to building guitar pedals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd always I knew I had to solder. I'd always fix my own guitars, doing setups and replacing pickups and soldering switches and stuff. But I think I always felt like the the insides of a pedal, particularly the insides of an amp, were just you know that's not for you. You don't go any further. You can take the screws off and look. Take the panel off and look at it and go, "Oh, those red things look cool," but don't touch it because this is not for you. And that's how I
Right.
always felt. And then one day I had a couple of pedals. I think a Seymour Duncan pickup booster pedal and a weird phaser pedal called a moon phaser that a guy in the UK made. I'm really sorry I can't remember his name. He used to be the UK agent for Robert Keeley, and
Oh, okay.
he made this amazing kind of 4 stage phaser that did sort of like 3/0 flanges. Anyway,
Yeah.
had these great pedals, and both of them had stopped working, and I was pretty sure it was just a switch. There's just something wrong with the switches, and I took the back off them, and I thought, look, if I can change a 5-way switch on a Strat, I can change a foot switch on a pedal. So I'm just gonna order some parts. And I'm gonna do this, and I did it, and it worked, and I had my pedals back again, and it was like the penny dropped. I thought, well, maybe I am allowed to monkey with this stuff. Maybe I can. Maybe I can figure this out. So that was really the beginning, and then um, just just learning as much as I could from as many different people as I could about how things work, and it was really a process for me of really understanding what's happening in a circuit, almost in terms of thinking about an effects chain on a pedal board. So
Okay.
once you can start to identify, okay, this group of components, I recognize the shape of that. That looks like an amplifier. Okay, that's making something louder. And oh, look, at the same time, this is doing some EQ stuff. So, oh, I get that. Oh, and what's this bit doing? Okay, that's something different. And bit by bit, understanding what each of those blocks were. And once you do that, then you can actually start to move them around and find out what that does. And and perhaps even go inside one of those blocks to find out what changes you can make within them.
Right.
So it's it's a really gradual process of kind of getting sucked deeper and deeper in to this fascinating thing. But I tell you the thing that really kept me going, and I'm kind of still surprised that I've not been put off by how many times things have not worked or things have gone wrong, because it's the kind of thing that would usually just make me so mad.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of keeps me interested and makes me think, that's interesting that the last 3 hours work have resulted in something that doesn't work. I wonder why that is. And and I think it's because I'm not a fully trained electronic engineer. I've not,
Yeah.
those guys learn stuff from like the physics upwards. Their grounding is so different. But for me, it's still sort of magic that on the one side I have a bunch of components on a circuit board, and the other side I have the kind of dynamic, um, musical noise coming out of my amp, and I can change something on the component side, and then I can hear this musical change on the other side,
Yeah.
and the gap of my ignorance between those two things makes it just magic to me. It's so cool that I can, in a controlled way, change something over here on this side, and I can hear that change on the other side coming out of my guitar, and when I can feel it when I pick, and that's just so cool.
Yeah, it's still a whole lot of magic for me, and I mean, I've gone as far as to like, buy breadboard kits and build circuits on a breadboard, and I'm not gonna grab it, but put some pedals to a couple of kits together, and
Yeah,
even then, I have listeners of this podcast who have tried to explain to me the way this works, and I you got to explain it to me like I'm five. Like you got to break it down. I don't understand. I'd love to understand more, but I long ago decided I'm never going to be a person who starts a pedal company because you're all lunatics. Because
yeah,
there's so many out there. But I love that. I mean, as a player, I love that they all exist and that you do this.
yeah,
But like you, I have no idea. Like I'm that shadow between the lights for me is really wide, and I'm okay with that. I probably know
yes,
more than the
yes,
average guitar player of how it works because I have had people explain it to me and I've done these things, but I'm okay not knowing. It's just
yeah,
fine. I
yeah.
just I just need to click the button and things work.
That's it. That's it.
So you got these three designs that are out right now.
Yeah,
And they are a little different than what you would normally see out there. I've seen a lot of the small speaker overdrive on some boards. I've tried, and now I can grab it. The Designer Drive, which I love that you built, maybe the most do it all, jack of all trades drive. Haven't seen this one take off as much. I think we talked about that a little bit, and
yeah,
I think that's a shame because I've really enjoyed playing with this. I got to play a little good bit with it on Friday because I was doing a lot of board work, pedal board work, getting ready for a gig that I had yesterday as of when we're recording this. And I don't know, it's really, really interesting. I don't know what I expected from the thin to fat mid the knob that controls the frequency width. Um, I don't know what I expected from it, but it is extremely powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I tried it with a Strat and just went full fat side, and it brought a bunch out of my Strat that I don't play it for that reason. It doesn't have a lot of that
Yes.
for me, and that really, really helped.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I think that pedal was really came out of thinking, learning and understanding why different overdrives sound different. So what is it that makes this overdrive sound different from that overdrive? And a lot of it is EQ. I mean, clipping is important, but there's not
Yeah,
actually that many different ways to clip a signal. And most of what we hear, and certainly what makes people on forums say, "Oh, if you've got a Fender amp, get this overdrive," or "Oh, that sounds terrible." That's for Marshalls. That's all about EQ really. And
yeah,
and I kind of thought, hey, does the pedal designer get to decide this stuff? And then it's the the back goes on the box, and you can't touch it. And usually all you get is a tone control that doesn't really get it the stuff you want to get to. By the time you've got it as bright as you want it, it's the bass is all gone, or it sounds.
right.
Well, by the time you've tamed the sharpness you didn't like, you've gone too muddy, and all this. I kind of thought, why is it like this? why can we not leave these choices open to you so that you
Yeah,
can have an overdrive that will sound good with all your amps and all your guitars, and you can change it on the fly. And what started out as a really complicated pedal, it was going to have all these controls on it to control all these different things. You're going to be able to take the back off, and I kind of going to put in some screw terminals so you could put
uh huh,
different diodes in, and all this kind of. And I just thought this is not the kind of pedal I want to use, or the kind of pedal I want to make. I don't. I want it to be much easier than this. I don't. The more going on the pedal, the more chance there is to kind of fret about not having set it right, or I want to just get to the sound I want and then go back to playing really. So I sort of systematically went through all those features and decided what I didn't really need, what wasn't adding that much, what I could actually combine into one control. So the width control does a bunch of different things at the same time. It's cutting bass, it's moving the mid-range peak around, and it's actually changing gain at the same time. Because obviously, as you bring in more low end, there's more energy there, and we perceive it as louder, and it will
yeah,
drive the amp harder. So you have to adjust the gain so that you don't then have to change all the other settings at the same time. And similarly, the edge control, which is the high frequency control, is is affecting two filters at the same time to kind of give you a really useful sweep. So even when it's turned right down, it's not muddy. Even when it's turned right up, it's not shrill. It's just letting you adjust the bit of your tone you want to get to, which is the attack and the kind of presence on the top.
yeah.
So yeah, I
This podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy Strings. I'm a snob, at least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy Strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringjoy are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy Strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy Strings today. I was just playing through it. I found it really easy, no matter what guitar I was playing or how much gain I needed, to find a really great sound. Whereas sometimes you go, okay, the sound I was looking for, I have to change the pedal entirely. Like this just is too set on, you use a tube screamer. If you don't want that mid hump, there's nothing you can do about it. You've got to have a
Yeah,
different overdrive entirely. Um, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to spend more time with it because I didn't get as much time with it as I really wanted because I was getting ready for the gig. But
yeah. I mean,
I
I
go ahead.
wouldn't ever tell anybody that they don't need any other overdrive pedals. It still has a character of its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a little bit more sort of dynamic in terms of the kind of you can dig in harder and get more drive or play a bit softer and it cleans up a little bit and it probably goes a bit more gritty and distorted than lots of kind of lower gain overdrives do. So
Yeah.
it isn't like the only overdrive anybody ever needs. What it is a drive that if you can't uh, make the change that you hear in your head and you want to you know you want to happen with by changing those two knobs, then
Yeah.
I haven't done my job right because that is the biggest thing for me. I hate having to work hard to get a good sound out of a pedal, and
I,
buying
I've
pedals that other
I've
people
found that
recommended, and
I
then
was gonna.
having to figure out like what why do people like this? Where's the good sound?
Yeah, I've certainly found that if I plug a pedal in and I don't know, set the controls basically so they're not extreme. I'm not one of those people that's like start everything at noon, but I do like I don't want it at some extreme where it's gonna blow out my ears or I won't hear it at all. Actually, I tend to start with the whatever level control all the way down so that I can turn it on and turn it up. But if I have to spend more than probably 15 seconds finding a usable sound on a pedal, I'm going to have a negative feeling about this pedal. I
Yeah,
don't care what the pedal does. I don't care if I have to spend and 15 seconds is a lot longer than you think it is for turning knobs and finding a sound. I should be able to get to something usable quickly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate the idea of somebody buying one of my pedals, which are, they cost more than lots of other things
Mm-hmm.
for lots of reasons. I mean, one of them is that I make them all myself. But I hate the idea of someone buying one of these pedals and plugging it in and not immediately going, ah, yeah, that's it. And I would rather. I always feel like there's sort of two approaches with pedals. There's some people who will like a lot of electroharmonics pedals, I think, are a great example where they give you the whole range,
Yeah.
and that means that you can get some really weird and way out stuff. But it also means that maybe for most people, 70% of the range on that control is kind of they're not ever going to go there. Uh, and I feel like I'm at the far end away from that, where I I hate the idea of someone using my pedals to sounding bad. I would
Yeah.
rather restrict the range to basically make sure that anywhere you set the controls is going to sound good. It's going to give you a usable sound that you can do something with. But
Yep.
that that's again why there are so many pedal companies, because people have very different ideas of what constitutes a great pedal.
Oh, it's
And
true. And to be honest, I would never tell someone to have one overdrive pedal either. In fact, you should have one of all of them. Just in
yeah,
general, cover your
yeah,
bases. One of all of them, and I don't mean major food groups. I mean literally one of every overdrive pedal. Um, because I need makers to keep continuing to be able to make really cool stuff, so we can try it out and I can talk to folks about it. Um, so yeah, so we'll move on a little bit. Because you've had these three designs, you came out with them. I I didn't check the timeline, but they were pretty much all at once. You launched as these three, right? Is that right?
no, I mean, to be honest, by the time I launched the first one, all
Mm-hmm.
three of them were pretty much done.
Yeah.
I'd, you have your whole life to write your first album, That's
Yes.
that's the easy part. Now, I mean, now it's harder because I'm have a full time job like making this stuff, and developing new stuff is more difficult. But I kind of had all of them ready, but I decided to launch the small speaker overdrive first because I just
Okay.
felt that was the most. Um, it was easy to get the concept, and also the concept was kind of unusual. I mean, you said like the design and drive has not really taken off as it should, and I definitely agree. And I think that's definitely my fault because I've I've made it sound too much of a like a utility pedal.
Oh yeah.
I should have just said to people like, here's another great overdrive, and it sounds awesome. Here you go, rather than saying like, this is going to be so handy for this situation, that situation, because I don't think people want useful stuff. It doesn't inspire you, and I think that pedal is super inspiring. I never plug it in without finding a sound I really love and want to
Yeah.
get playing. But anyway, I mean maybe because I kind of knew launching with a pedal like that, that's sort of like this is a great pedal for everybody. It's kind of easy for people to be like, yeah, blah blah blah, what, yeah, whatever. Whereas the small speaker overdrive is like super specific. Uh, for anybody who doesn't know, this is a pedal that's kind of based on the sound of like a small amp, like a Fender Champ, but specifically the sound, like we talked about, is the sound of record. Is
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't interested in this. A Champ in the room is fine. It's okay. It's a fun thing to play with, but a Champ in a studio, close mic'd, so you get a bit of like proximity effect, because the bass reinforcement you get when a microphone's put really close to something, and and that's why that's such a great recording amp, because the things that make it not a great amp in the room, slightly boxy, not a lot of low end, not a lot of high end, on a record makes it ideal. So the engineer doesn't have to touch the EQ. The guitar just sits in the mix because it doesn't, it's just perfectly positioned with that
Right.
nice sort of upper mid thing, and that's something I'd known about back from working for Sound on Sound, interviewing producers and engineers and hanging out in studios and stuff, and I'd always been really interested in that that small amp thing where it's like the last amp you probably think it would be when you hear this massive guitar sound on a record, and it's like a little Champ or Vibra Champ or something, or like one of the Gibson student model amps. And
Yeah.
that was sort of my big idea. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could put that in a pedal, put that thing that it does. And I like little amps. I like 1x10s. I don't play like 1x8 amps all that often, but I love 1x10s, and I love single-ended amps as well, because of that responsiveness, and the fact there's no sort of point where it tips over from clean to dirty. It's just a smooth line,
Yeah.
and by picking harder or by changing the volume knob, you can move up and down that line, and so that was the other side. So the two sides of the pedal were it's like the two things that I'm thinking about all the time in terms of pedals, which is like frequency. So like, where is this going to sit in the mix? How is this going to fit in with its
Right.
intended use? And then dynamics, like how am I playing dynamics going to translate into what this pedal does? So that the thing I wrote down of like, this is what this pedal has to do is do that sitting in a mix thing that a Champ would do, a little amp would do, and then do that dynamic thing that you get from a single-ended amp, where it's just like an extension of your guitar, and it's just an effortless thing to play through.
Yeah.
And so that was my big idea, and I think maybe that's why that pedal has got a small, some traction with people,
Yeah.
because that's hey, that's a cool thing, right? Who doesn't
I
want that?
Exactly. I think it's rad. And there's been a few especially recently, people trying to emulate that small amp thing. But for a long time the only pedals you saw trying to emulate anything were emulate big amps when you can't play big amps, Marshall
Mm.
in a box kind of pedals, or you see even in the newer technology, we see a lot of things that are like trying to sound like a Vox AC30, or because you had one amp, and if you wanted that other flavor, you try to get something else. So there's been a lot of that, making bigger amps smaller. But I love the idea of a pedal that's goal is the opposite. We're going to take that little amp and we're going to get that louder for you. We're going to make that, a focus sound. I really, really like
Yeah,
that idea a lot, because I loved. I play through big amps live because I need them to be clean at a certain volume, but I do love just sitting around playing a little 5 to 10 watt amp and just turning it up, and just
yeah,
it sounds and feels great to play.
yeah. I mean, the the things I was really thinking about listening to when I was developing that were, yes, I mean, partly some of the kind of records that famously made, some of the '70s Clapton stuff where he used a champ or vibra champ, or like Mike Campbell from the Heartbreakers, who's one of my favorite guitarists. And I think he used to gig with like a Princeton, yeah, like a small tweed amp and a small
Like a tweed
blackface amp,
Princeton, yeah.
and he'd have them kind of mic'd up in parallel, and then that would go through the stadium PA, and that was his guitar sound. So
Oh
cool.
yeah.
But yeah, it was again really it was listening to the. I don't want the sound of the amp. I want the sound of the record, which is a totally different thing. So I think a lot of those amp emulation pedals, which are fantastic, they sort of they look at the circuit of the amp and try and recreate that in with transistors and or digitally, which is great. I completely didn't do that. I just the inside of the pedal bears no uh, resemblance at all to the inside of an amp.
Yeah.
But it's finding a different way to get to the end result of that sound and that feel, basically.
Yeah, that's what makes it great. Some people get really wrapped up in, oh, this pedal is that amp, just smaller or whatever. I like the idea that you just said, hey, this is what this sounds like. I can get to it this way and make it available. Um, so moving on from that, so you released that one. When does the Focus Fuzz and the Designer Drive
The
come
Designer
out?
Drive was the second one,
Okay.
and then I did the Focus Fuzz, and I kind of regret that. So I made 250 Focus Fuzzes, so I had the germanium
Uh huh.
transistors to do 250, and uh, when I started out, I had this real thing about I didn't want to be the kind of pedal company that just does like that all their stuff's constantly sold out. I find that really
Yeah.
annoying. Um, I now know why they do it. It's a really, really good way to do business. There's no wasted effort.
Yeah.
You make things, But I didn't want to do that. But I wanted to do this germanium pedal. I had, this was the design I had. Um, but I kind of said, okay, I'm just doing 250 of these, just doing 250, and that's it. And I could have sold twice as many, and they went in like 48 hours or something. And I
Yeah.
kind of thought, oh, why did I say that so definitely? Because then the other thing I hate is when people say it's limited edition, and then they say, oh, now there's a red one, and this is limited edition. Now there's a blue one,
Yeah.
and everyone who bought the first one is like, what? So I kind of regret that a bit, and so the more recently I did make a silicon version of the pedal of the Focus Fuzz that I think sounds very, very close. It's not quite the same, but it has all the things that made the Focus Fuzz really great. And that one's much cheaper, and it's available all the time. And I want to do more germanium pedals, but they
Yeah.
will be different. I don't I I totally get that it wouldn't be cool to um, to annoy those people who kindly bought one of the 250 pedals, by doing the same thing again. But that pedal is um, again, it's a pedal I made for myself because I've always been really frustrated that I'll see other people playing using a tone bender or a fuzz face, and I think, man, that sounds so good. Uh, I want to try that, and then I'll get one of those pedals, and it just sounds like a big kind of wall of sound coming out of my amp, and I can't do anything with it. It's too much. And then you go on forums, you talk to people, and they're like, oh no, you need to set your amp this certain way, and like, no, you got the wrong kind of amp. You need this, and you need to have your guitar volume back to this point. And that's cool. And in the same way that people go really deep into Steve Ray Vaughan's tone or Hendrix or whatever, and I completely respect that, but I'm not interested in doing that. I need a pedal that will work with my amp how I like to have it set, with my guitar that I use for everything else. So again, that was another sort of challenge I set to myself, as with the Designer Drive. Can I make a fuzz pedal that I can put into a clean amp, and it will make me sound like Jimmy Page with his Telecaster and his tone bender, and so it's definitely on the milder end of the fuzz spectrum. There's loads of guys out there doing amazing, like Death by Audio, kind of crazy amp melting, face melting fuzzes.
And there are many.
And there are many, yeah, and they're super cool. But that was definitely not what I wanted to do. So it really is. I think it sort of picks up about where you describe overdrive or distortion, and it goes from there to sort of vintage fuzz and stops.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And I think there's loads of really cool, usable, interesting sounds in that spectrum that we don't usually get because, and I know why people do it, but when you say fuzz pedal, people want it to be insane, mega fuzz, and then they don't use it because it's basically unusable.
It's too much.
So, yeah,
it's too much.
Yeah. So the Focus Fuzz is the sort of unique thing about it is the focus control is like an extra gain stage on the front of the fuzz stage, and as you increase gain, it's also kind of cutting bass. So on a treble booster, something like the Keeley one or the Catlin Bread, Naga Viper, all these pedals where you have a control that's usually called range.
Right.
And what that is you've got like a small capacitor and a bigger capacitor, and it lets you go from the small capacitor, which cuts loads of bass, to the big one, which cuts less. But again, as you make that switch, generally, as you go to the small capacitor, so more treble, less bass, you also lose volume at the same time. And it's really annoying. So this, in the Focus Fuzz, as you go more treble, less bass, you also get more gain.
So you're making up that volume loss or perceived volume loss that you're getting.
And what happens is when it turned down, it's like a kind of warmer, sort of woolier fuzz. And then turning up that focus knob, it's like putting the thrusters on, because as you're getting less bass and more treble and more definition, you're also getting a bucket load more gain.
Yeah.
So at the other end of the extreme, it's that kind of tone bendery thing, like super focused fuzz, and yeah, that when I kind of got that right, I was like, oh, this is got to be on the pedal. It's got to be the name of the pedal, because it's such a cool thing, and it's very simple, but it isn't something anyone else has done, and it's the kind of thing that I sort of secretly get a bit frustrated with lots of pedals that I see, where it's great to have options, clipping switches and things that give you different diodes, different levels of clipping, but it really isn't that hard to also compensate for the drop in level at the same time. Like it really isn't hard to do, and nobody does it, and I find it really annoying. Like, wouldn't it be more useful if I could change clipping character without like I like the full drive? You
Yes.
go to like no clipping diodes,
Uh-huh.
and it's just like full op amp
It's
going
it's a
loud.
lot.
Yeah,
It's real loud.
like it isn't difficult to to achieve closer to unity between those options, but nobody does it, and I I don't really know why, because it'd be so much more useful.
It
So
would
yeah,
the
that's
full drive's a great example of where I basically only used one setting on it because the others were just so different and got so loud. I can't remember now which one I used. Um, there was also on that one there was a weird thing the way the volume levels were on those settings that the boosts out of the pedal didn't actually boost volume. It just added more overdrive to the
mm,
pedal. And so
mm,
whichever setting I used was the one where the boost actually would act as a boost because it was the only overdrive on my pedal board. So I
yeah,
needed it to do that. But that's what I mean about your pedals. And I don't see anybody out there doing anything the way you're doing these. I mean,
yeah,
there are some others doing something around the small speaker thing a little bit, not much, but
yeah, sure,
no one's approaching them the way you're doing it, which is one of the things I like, and it's really hard to do in at this point in the pedal industry because it feels like everything's been done. I get
yeah,
surprised anytime someone comes out with something unique anymore.
yeah, I'm really not, as I said, I'm not into exploring the extremes of what guitar can do.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in the outer limits. I like really good classic guitar tones. There's a reason why we all keep coming back to the same sort of touchstones for great sounds, and why those guys are still touring into their 80s and stuff. It's because that's how most of us want the guitar to sound.
yeah.
And so yeah, how do you find new stuff within, while still basically making the sounds that everybody has always wanted?
Yeah.
And I think one way to do it um, is to make sure that you just don't have to think about it. That um, by just spending a little bit more time at trying to get the range of the controls right, trying to just tweak and test and tweak and test, and just try and get it to a point that you can just plug in and get the sound you want and go, and then that becomes a really fun and inspiring thing. Because I mean, why? What are we doing when we're buying pedals if not trying to buy a little box of inspiration that we're going to open up? It's going to make us want to play. That
That's
that at the end of the
exactly
day
it.
is what you want it to do. So I think that's what I'm thinking about a lot. Like, I need to be able to just plug this in, stomp on it, feel like a rock star, and go.
Get that dopamine hit for the day.
Yeah,
Just get your head in the right. I see. I
yeah,
I think of it the same way. Like I have a bunch of pedals on a shelf, like a ton of people who do these podcasts, and it's a whole thing. But I also have like two or three pedal boards put together at any time. And the one of the best things that keeps me playing guitar is I walk in and I look at a pedal. I haven't played that in a while. I want to play that. Sit there, plug it in, and you get this inspiration from a pedal. And I like that. I like that approach to it a lot. That you're just
mm,
trying to create little pockets of inspiration for players, something they really enjoy using and playing, and get you playing guitar because that's the ultimate goal. Play more
yeah,
guitar.
yeah. But what I've learned from the designer drive experience is really, um, don't I don't think I will try to kind of chase the middle anymore. I think as a small company, and to be honest, I like being a small company. I'm not in a hurry to become a big one and to employ lots of other people. But I think yeah, maybe I will go more niche in the future, explore smaller avenues of things that are fun and inspiring, and and probably if it's fun for me, listening to it for the 100th hour of going backs and forwards between different prototypes. If I'm still plugging in and finding it fun, then it's got to be fun for some other people, surely somewhere.
Well, I like it. I like that a lot. Well, um, I think that's a great place to wrap up as we come up on the hour mark. Sorry, I'm losing words here. Come up on the hour mark. So we're gonna wrap up here. David, where can everybody find Great Eastern Effects on the internet?
Yeah, our website's greateasterneffects.com. So that's Great Eastern and the letters fx.com. And you'll
Awesome.
find us there, and we're on Instagram at Great Eastern Effects, YouTube, all the usual places. But please, yeah, come and say hi, send me messages, tell me what to do. I'll be very happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, all of those links are down in the description below. Y'all be sure to click all of those. Dave and I are about to wrap up here, but we're going to head over and record an episode for Patreon. If you want to hear more from David and me, I guess, you can sign up for the Patreon over at patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for $5 a month, less than a cup of coffee in some places, you can get an extra episode every time a regular episode drops of 40 Watt Podcast. In the meantime, David, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on, hanging out, talking pedals. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Well, listeners, till you hear from me again, y'all be sure to be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and make some noise.